Hey guys, my name's Ohaj. I'm pretty sure all of you guys know that by now, and this is gonna be a one take. In the past 2 weeks, I've pretty much listened to every single Kendrick Lamar song slash album slash everything, and I have a lot to say. I've listened to it frontwards, backwards, everything, multiple times, twice probably at minimum, and there's just a lot that I came by, and I just wanted to share it. This is coming from the perspective of a very sheltered, nerdy brown boy who is not involved in the rap scene at all, and is not black. So, all right, let's go on. So the first album that he came out with was in 2011, Section 80. So Section 80's an amazing debut album, as as I've heard. I haven't listened to a lot of debut albums, to be honest, but it was really interesting to see when I listened to all these backwards to see how he started off so strong. He still had like his mixing vocals, very like a lot of experimentation with different styles, and it was just a very good listen. I would say that a lot of the concepts that he introduced in this album would be touched upon in a lot of his other future albums, and I think that's really cool. I've always liked the album cover for this as well, because in the songs he talks a lot about how he is a kid dealing with a lot of like sins in his past, but also trying to remain very religious. And in this album cover you can kind of see like the Bible, but you can also see like a lot of like drugs and alcohol and prescription medications and guns and cigars and all of that. Like, so I think that was a really cool thing. He also brought that up in one of his songs as well, where he says that like he will talk about like girls and alcohol and guns, and the same line he'll also mention God and family, and that's just who he is, and that's how a lot of people are. We're all dealing with our own sins. So yeah, pretty good album. All right, now we get to one of the goats, I would say. 2012, Good Kid, Mad City. So this one was pretty much the album that shot him into like famehood. This is a really cool album. It kind of talks about how, well, there's a whole overarching, almost like a movie. It starts, the first song itself talks about how he goes to a party when he's a little kid and meets this one girl that he really likes, and over time he ends up getting really involved in this girl, and turns out that the girl has a lot of like people in her life who are very bad influences on him, and goes through that story about him falling into this peer pressure, getting involved in a bank robbery, shooting at some like opposing gang members, and then eventually his best friend ends up dying. And then the second half of the album, so the middle two songs are Good Kid, Mad City. When Mad City start After Mad City starts, it kind of goes into how his best friend Dave, he died, and about how Dave's family wanted to get revenge and was trying to pull him into getting revenge. Meanwhile, his parents and his family and his mom specifically told him to not fall into that and to go more into his music, which he decided to do. And that's kind of like talking about how he was the one good kid in a mad city. So I think this is a beautiful album. It was probably what got me into Kendrick Lamar back in the day. It has like Poetic Justice. It has Money Trees. It has Swimming Pool and a bunch of other classics. So great album, 10 out of 10. All right. This is what most people consider the best album of his, and some people even call this the best album of all time, To Pimp a Butterfly. To be honest, I love this album, but this is where I felt like I couldn't relate as much, being a brown guy, not involved in the black community as much. This album is more about retaliation. So let's talk about the name of the album first. To Pimp a Butterfly. Um, it talks about how like butterfly like so he refers to black people as butterflies, as like very like they grow up and caterpillars that are very oppressed, very like humble, very oppressed, not able to do a lot, and then they can grow into these butterflies. And how when they are able to come out of that cocoon and finally like live their life, the American government and all the societal racism that happens stuffs them down and pimps them for their own, like taking advantage of what they did, their like appeal to the crowd, their charisma, and exploiting them for money and for power and for respect. And I think this is an amazing album. It's from start to finish. The other really cool thing about this album is that after the end of every song, he's reciting a poem, right? And he reveals the poem one line at a time, or like a couple lines at a time. And you can see this poem develop throughout the whole album until you come to the final song, Mortal Man. And in that one, he ends the song with the poem fully finished, but the poem smoothly transitions into an interview. And it's an interview done with Tupac. And sorry if that's a spoiler, this is literally like 9 years ago, 10 years ago. But yeah, so it's an interview with Tupac where he found recordings of Tupac's interviews in the past and interviews Tupac, starting off with that poem. And it talks a lot about how like the issues that were back then have not really changed a lot, but we're trying to make it better. And because of that, like this album is considered pretty much one of the greatest of all time. It has two really, really good songs. One of them is All Right. Everyone has heard that song. The other one that I never heard of, but apparently it was really popular, was King Kunta. King Kunta is an amazing song, so deep. When you listen to it, you just think it's just like a dancing club music, but that song has so many layers to it. It's a song about how like people fall into these things called the yams, like the fruit, but yams are pretty much a motif to represent the different sins that people fall into, like money, power, like lust, and how every society and every person deals with it in a different way. And that song, King Kunta, also references ghostwriters and heavily like references Drake. And I think this is where the whole disconnect between Drake and Kendrick started, like really back then. And he's been hating on Drake since the beginning. It's kind of been growing so far. So amazing, amazing album. 10 out of 10 for sure. Probably one of the greatest albums of all time. But we'll continue. All right. So this is Damn. Damn is also a really great album. This is the album that won the Pulitzer's Award for rap. It's the first ever rap album to ever win an award like that for storytelling, actually. And speaking of its story, it's actually a really interesting story. The first song starts off with him confronting this lady about he's basically confronting this lady, which is actually like a representation of his death. And the song kind of like album after that kind of goes through all of Kendrick's like emotions, so like loyalty, like DNA, and all of that. Like it kind of goes through the whole like what makes Kendrick. And then it's really cool how it builds up to that final song, Duckworth, where actually Duckworth is kind of him talking about how he would never have become Kendrick if he had signed a deal with the with a producer that his dad recommended, as I think. And then you find out actually that it's actually a cyclical story. Like the end of Duckworth loops back right at the beginning of the album again, and it's actually really, really cool like storytelling in that way, where it's talking about there were like two paths in life that he could have taken, but both of them are cyclical on each other. And that's also like really like it's even more amazing when you think about the deluxe edition that came out of this album. And the deluxe edition is literally the same exact songs, but just the order of them is flipped. So it starts with Duckworth and goes backwards, and you can actually tell, like, whenever you see it from that other perspective, you can see like, wow, like both of these routes like worked really well, and it's a very cool like cyclical story. And to be honest, like, the album is great. I liked it. None of these albums, I mean, I liked all of these albums. They're all like pretty much like, I would rate them all like 8 to 10, and they're very little differences between them. So this is a great album, and it won the award for the Pulitzer Award for rap best storytelling, and the first one to ever win because of an album for rap. So great album. All right. So yeah, the next album that we have on our list is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, 2022. So this album came out after some time, like a big hiatus from 2017 with the release of Damn, to 2022 when this album came out. It was also after the whole COVID, so after the whole George Floyd stuff and a lot of the issues that were going on with America in that time, with Trump going on as well. So this album, a lot of people don't, it doesn't connect with a lot of the general population, like at least his like fans a lot, just because he kind of takes a step away from the usual topics that he's covering, which are pretty much like the suppression of black people, um, and he delves a lot more into his own personal stories. He talks a lot about issues like trauma, family dynamics, pressures from society, a lot about like his relationships and how like relationships with women in his life were. It also goes into some of his personal struggles with alcohol and drug abuse, and how he got over that. It also goes a little bit about his relationship with God and how he uses that to deal with a lot of his issues as well. It has a lot of like healing and self-awareness, and the realization that, you know, there are like, you are imperfect, but you also have like responsibilities that you need to work with, and how you kind of balance all of that. So it's a whole like discussion of like how to suppress your inner demons and you know, get freedom for yourself. So I think, like, as you guys can probably tell, like, this is the album that I connected with the most, even though it's not like liked by the public so much. I felt like, you know, a lot of those topics that he was dealing with really vibed with me, and that's why I rank it really high, as you'll see when we get to the ranking. But yeah, we get to the best part about this video, my album rankings and some final statements. So the number fifth one that I would say is Section 80. As I said, great album. It was his debut. Even though I ranked it last, I would say it's probably like 8 or 9, honestly. Great from start to finish. It didn't have an overarching story, because it was more of like an LP that kind of became an album. But overall, it was really good. It had some great songs. High Power is really good. It also showed how he's willing to experiment with a lot of jazz and funk music, and you'll see that a lot more in his upcoming albums. All right, number 4, Damn. As I said, like, this is a great album. It did win the Pulitzer Award for storytelling. It has very cool cyclical structure. Some people consider this his best album. For me, I felt like I couldn't really connect to a lot of the songs, and a lot of the songs were very, very rap. And I like rap, but not like the fast kind, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It does have DNA in it, which is a great song. That's you know, it's a great song. It's very famous. And it has like that song with Rihanna, Loyalty. It has Humble. So that's another criticism people have about this album, is that it's very like mainstream. It was made for a lot of the mainstream recognition, and I feel like I connected a lot more with his like more personalized and more like more songs where he talks about like the societal issues that are going on with the black community and just in America in general. All right, so Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I have this as number three, even though it's my favorite album. As I said, like it talks a lot about his personal struggles, but I can't really put it above the other two on the list. It does have really good songs like The Heart Part 6. It has, I really liked, as we talked, We Cry Together, great song. Not very well like recognized, but I loved it. It also has Auntie Diaries, which is kind of about how he talks about his aunt. His uncle was actually like transgender and became his aunt. And I think it's really cool that he brought that up during 2022, where a lot of people were struggling with things like that. I also really liked Mirror. Mirror was a great song. So there's a lot of really good ones that are connected to people very personally. But it's not for everyone, I would say. But still, great album, like 9 out of 10. Honestly, my personal ranking, I would put it probably higher for just like being able to like listen to it and connect with it. I'll probably put it at 10 out of 10. This is where I'm gonna get a lot of people here to Pimp a Butterfly. I put this as number two, even though some people literally consider it the top like best album of in history, even some places I've seen. But To Pimp a Butterfly, like I told you guys, it's a piece about how like black people struggle and are being put down, even though they're like, they have so much potential, and the different ways that they get put down. And it has All Right, great song. King Kunta, I talked a lot about King Kunta. Highly recommend you guys listen to it. Wesley's Theory is great as well. And then finally, like the whole payoff with the song is building up that poem and leading up to Mortal Man, and seeing how like things haven't really changed that much since Tupac's time. So great album, probably the greatest of all time. Just I can't put it above my favorite album, which is Good Kid, Mad City. Good Kid, Mad City. That's the thing that got me in here. Great songs. Mad City is great. Swimming Pool is great. Backseat Freestyle is great. Money Tree is great. Poetic Justice is great. The Art of Peer Pressure is very like scary about how like they do the bank robbery and get involved in all this stuff. They have there's a lot of like really really good songs in here, and the whole storytelling about how it starts as a movie where he gets involved in this girl named Shireen, and then how it goes through the whole story about doing like having like backseat freestyles with the friends, driving down the road, then getting into like a bank robbery, getting shot at, and then getting involved with the police, getting beaten up with that, having his like best friend die, and then how he's like coping with how his best friend died and what to do afterwards, and then finally ending with how his mom tells him to like not get involved in all this stuff and focus more on his art, and that's what he does, and despite all odds he ends up becoming the person who he is now. So I just feel like Good Kid, Mad City just started the whole thing, and it's a very great piece about what happens in Compton, with the kids that grow up there, and the racism and the peer pressure that they get involved in. So it's my favorite album, great to listen to, very like good fast tracks, which like fast great rap tracks, but also a lot of like lyrical songs as well. Great sonically, just not a lot of experimentation when it came to jazz and funk as he's known for, but I think it fit because it was more about like a story about his childhood and how he grew up. So this would be my number one album from him. So to close it off, honestly, like this has been a great 2 weeks, listening to everything backwards and frontwards multiple times, getting to like talk about all this. What I've learned is, with the whole, like, a lot of my favorite albums coming from West Coast artists, Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and now Kendrick. I just have to say that the rap scene in the West Coast is just the best, especially from Compton. And yeah, um, that's about it, guys. West Coast, Best Coast, all that. This is a super cringy video. Sorry about this. It literally is 20 minutes long. No one will probably listen to it, but I just had to get a lot of stuff out. So, all right, guys, bye.